Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host Simon Conboy. Carrying on with the season preview series today, and we will be focusing on the AFC West Oakland Raiders, who of course came back from years of irrelevancy last year, looking like a really impressive team heading into the 2017 season. So if you've not seen one of these episodes before, I will be going through my projected offensive and defensive starters. Of course, we're in the midst of pre-season and camp, but I think this will be an accurate reflection, injuries notwithstanding, of how this team lines up on the opening weekend. Followed by a brief look at the schedule, where I'm really highlighting what I consider to be the key areas if this team is going to potentially win the division this year, as well as giving my projected record for highlighting what I believe are the three key areas for this team heading into the season if they are going to improve and once again make that playoff run. So, we'll begin with the offensive starters at quarterback, the new highest paid player in the NFL in Derek Carr, who was a legitimate MVP candidate last year. Played very smart football. I think that's what stood out most about him. Did not make too many bad decisions. Didn't throw deep as much as I would like, but as part of what made them so efficient. I don't think his skill set is truly outstanding, but he's quite good at everything. He's mobile enough, he's got great pocket awareness, reads the field well, and he's got a good strong arm that can make all the throws. So looks like one of the best young quarterbacks in the league. I'm sure the Raiders are very happy to have him for the long term. Running back, one of the stories of the offseason, Marshawn Lynch, he's back. How much he's got left in the tank will be interesting to see. I've got no doubt he'll be productive, but whether it'll be vintage beast mode, I'm not so sure. But behind him, they've got some depth at the position. Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington both played reasonably well last year, and I think Washington in particular will offer a really good complement to what Lynch does. Lynch, of course, a power back with how much speed remains to be seen, but always had decent speed to him. DeAndre Washington, I think, will be the best of the three in the third down role, but I won't be surprised to see a real platoon effort here where they use all the guys and possibly Lynch as a finisher in fourth quarters, but it certainly got a lot of potential, particularly behind that line. The receiving group remains pretty solid, one of the better 1-2 punches in the league. Amari Cooper has gotten better. He's still a bit streaky. He has like monster games, has the odd game off, but he's one of the best young route runners in football. He's got good hands, does drop a bit more than I'd like, but you see that sometimes in young players. Reminds me of AJ Green. I'm not sure he's quite on the same level athletically, but I think he's got that kind of skill set as a route runner, as a all-round after the catch guy who can make the odd spectacular grab. Crabtree is a physical presence, very, very good red zone receiver, in spite of what Richard Sherman may say. Not the quickest or fastest guy, but he can out-physical guys, and he's a very good complement to Cooper. And the third receiver, I think, will be Seth Roberts. Cordero Patterson hasn't shown me enough to think he's even close to a starting NFL wide receiver. Roberts has had some flashes. I think he can be effective in the slot considering the weapons around him. The tight end spot, this is an interesting one. I think Jared Cook probably ends up getting the start with Clive Wolford. It's a decent enough pairing that we could see either one of them on, or see some two tight end sets. I mean, Cook is talented as heck, but incredibly inconsistent. And I think I like enough of what I saw from Wolford last year to think he's going to see some snaps at the position as well. Not an overwhelming group, but again, they'll be able to contribute. Part of that is this offensive line. They were superb last year. The one issue at the moment is, of course, Donald Penn holding out for a new contract, which, to be fair, he deserves. He's been great for the Raiders since the Buccaneers let him go. We're good at letting players go. They're pretty good. The right tackle spot, I think we'll be looking at Marshall Newhouse, formerly of the Packers there. Not a great player by any means, but I think he can do a good enough job, the talent around him, that some of his issues will be essentially negated. So I worry about him in pass protection, particularly in that division, but they do need to get Penn back, otherwise this position could end up being a bit of an issue. But the interior is fantastic, arguably the top interior in the league. Kelechi Osemele, who came over last year, and Gabe Jackson, who just signed a big contract with the team. Two of the possibly the best guard pair in the league. Osemele was superb as always last year, one of the most dominating and physical run blockers in the league. He's also very good in pass protection. Jackson's probably the better pass protection guy, but he can also run block. They're just a great pair, both Pro Bowl caliber players. And at centre, Rodney Hudson, who's developed into a very good player in his own right. So expect them to do a heck of a job. I'm sure, especially Lynch in his last season with the Seahawks, will enjoy running behind these guys far more. They've got potentially be a real powerful group. And at kicker, Sebastian Janikowski, of course, still at the top of his game, a very reliable, decent player at that position. This offense looks loaded, to be honest. It's hard to look at it and see anything that stands out as a glaring weakness. There's some spots that aren't necessarily as strong, but then they're offset by other players in that group that are. This offense could be balanced. It should be potent. I can't see the receiving game getting worse. If anything, I expect it to be better. They've got some more options at tight end, some more experience from those younger guys, and a larger threat of a run game. As long as the offensive line can play like it did last year, this group should be great, and Carr should only continue to get better. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball, at defensive end, also got last year's defensive MVP in Khalil Mack, who's just an absolute stud. Plays the run as well as any defensive lineman in the league. I've said he's not got the most finesse as a pass rusher. I think that's the one thing he can possibly improve on, adding a few more moves to the repertoire, but he plays with such power and such a high motor that he's still going to get sacks. I mean, his ball rush is fantastic. He's got great first step, and plays with really good leverage as well. Does remind me a little bit of Von Miller, but the sort of style that they play is somewhat different. But he's a top player, and Mario Edwards, if he can stay healthy this year, should be a decent complement. You can also see them playing Bruce Irvin with his hand in the dirt, perhaps. So that's a decent pairing. The defensive tackle spot does concern me a little, though. Rookie Eddie Vanderdos is likely to be there, along with, look at the group, probably Justin Ellis. It's not the most impressive bunch in the middle. If they can get some pass rush, that'd be great, but really I think they're going to need to clog running lanes. Teams are going to try and run on these guys with the pass rushers that they've got, and also to try and keep that offense off the field, so they're going to have to play well. The outside linebacker spot, we've got Bruce Irvin, who's better as a pass rusher than as a coverage guy, but he's a highly athletic player. If he could develop in pass coverage, he'll be a real weapon for this team, because then he's can line up all across the field and pose real matchup problems. I'm not sure that'll happen, but for what he does, he is effective. He's just a run and chase player who can get around the edge. I suspect we'll see Jelani Jenkins get the job done. This just because I think he had a really good rookie season, and there's not a huge amount of talent there. But that spot I think is wide open. Similar with the middle linebacker spot, which I've currently got the rookie Markel Lee in, just because they draft the fellow. Why not see what he's got? This could be an issue with the defensive tackle group. I'm a little worried about how soft this team may be against the run. The corner position looks okay. David Amerson played quite well last year. Started the season on fire, but sort of fell off a bit after that. But he can play man reasonably well. I suspect we're going to see Garion Conley eventually. I don't know how soon that'll be, but once he's in, he'll be in the starting lineup. He's just got too much talent not to be. And I suspect Sean Smith, simply from an experience standpoint, I think he's a liability on the outside at this stage in his career, but I think he could certainly be an effective slot player for them. And then the safety position, Reggie Nelson, who's still a solid player, and I think Cole Joseph had a pretty good rookie season. I think Melifonwu will eventually get there. You could even see Melifonwu competing for one of the corner spots. I think he's got that kind of athleticism. But whilst Reggie Nelson's there, I'm not sure he's going to be able to get a starting job. This is a decent pair of safeties. The secondary does look to be in reasonable shape, even if the front seven certainly looks like it's got some holes. And that's really... And then at punter, we've got Marquette King. Raiders always really good in the kicking department, aren't they? It seems. So, yeah, defensively, this team... I expect the offense to be so high scoring that they're going to be facing off against a lot of teams throwing the ball to play catch up with them. I think that will play to their strengths. I think the secondary and the pass rush are in good shape. My concern is the front seven's ability to cover the middle of the field as well as to stop the run. I think they look a bit light at defensive tackle. Not a lot of high-end quality there, not a lot of depth. Similar at the linebacker position. And I think there's going to need to be real leadership there. Otherwise, if there's one Achilles heel this team's got, I think that could be it. The secondary as well, whilst I think it probably looks better by comparison to the rest of the defence. I'm not sure it's great, but there's talent there. So this group, I've not got enormously high expectations for. Mack will make some plays, I've got no doubt about that. And yeah, I'm expecting a middling bunch at best. I think they certainly could struggle this year unless some of these young players in the secondary can really take off, and they maybe get a couple of surprises in the front seven. Guys having really good seasons kind of out of nowhere. In terms of the schedule this year, of course, it's kind of tough playing in the AFC West. You got a pretty tough group of teams there. The season starts off looking okay, though. There's some reasonable matchups there. The Titans will be a really good week one game, but I think they can get off the board fast with the Jets, the Redskins, the Broncos, Ravens. Not an enormously easy game with the Broncos, but I think the rest of them are very winnable. Possibly the Redskins could spring the upset. But once this team has their bye week in week 10, it becomes real tough sledding for the end of the season. The Patriots, followed by the Broncos, the Giants, then they're at the Chiefs, the Cowboys, the Eagles and the Chargers. Of course, all the divisional games are big, not only because any one of those teams could be competing for the division, but they're all decent sides, hence why they could all be competing. Similar with the NFC East, I just don't know what to make of those teams. And then you've got the Patriots in there, so there's definitely going to be some teams battling for the playoffs that they're going to have to fight their way through. A lot of primetime games for this team this year as well. I don't know if that necessarily helps matters, but that end stretch is certainly what's going to determine how far this team can go, whether they can lock up that first round bye. I think the talent is probably there, particularly in the regular season, where I think the offenses can carry teams more than once they get to the postseason. However, there are, as always, 3 key areas for this team in order to be successful. One of them is, for me, the run game. The battery of running backs. I think the pass game is going to be good, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be as overpowering as a team like the Falcons last year or the Packers usually are. Whilst Amari Cooper, Crabtree and that are good, they're not the most explosive passing game. Therefore, the balance of the run game, the ability to play action, I think is going to be key. The line's there for this to happen. The receiving weapons there to open it up. If these guys can really have a top 10 run game, which they should, if Marshawn Lynch is back to it, maybe 80% of his best, then they should be really good. And if so, this offense is going to be one of the hardest to stop. And I think they'll win a lot of games on the back of them alone. The run defense is my biggest concern, as I've sort of hinted at throughout the show. I feel this team is soft at linebacker. I feel they're pretty soft up the middle. Teams are going to try and, shorten games against this team. You have to do it. It looks like a weakness. It's something I think they're going to have to really just kind of hope plays out well, because you look at the roster and I don't see anything there to suggest it's going to be a strength. So they're going to have to step up. And then on top of that, there's a number of things, but I think the general youth in this secondary is going to have to play really well, particularly towards the end of the season when they've got some of those tough games against some really good passing attacks and some decent quarterbacks. There's a lot of inexperience there. If there's one thing that could really hold them down, particularly once this team gets to the playoffs, because I do think they'll get there, it could well be that. At the end of the day, I've got this team. They finished with a very impressive. Was it 12-4 last year? I can't even remember. I think it was 12-4. This year, I've got them sliding a little. I've got them going to 11-5. But I think that'll be good enough. This team is talented. It's a tough schedule, but I think they'll do enough, and I think they'll just drop a couple games at the end of the season that might not have them in contention for that 1 seed. I think some of those issues will show up at the end of the year, particularly when you've got to play teams like the Cowboys. The Chiefs are always going to be happy to run the ball, and I'm sure the Patriots will come up with something when they play against them. But I think they'll have a successful season. I think they're a legitimate threat in the AFC, and I think things bode well for Raider Nation. So there you have it. That's your 2017 Oakland Raiders. Let me know, what do you guys think? Is there anyone that you feel I should be paying attention to in the pre-season? Anyone I've not mentioned in this list that you think is likely to be a star? Give us a shout, whether it's the comment section below, the Cover Zero Facebook page, or find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. Always happy to talk football. And if you've enjoyed this, check out some more of the episodes. Really on the home stretch with this series now. Only got 5 teams to go after this. So, yeah, if you follow any other teams, there's a good chance they've been covered. There's plenty of other stuff on the channel. We did our first roundtable last week, hoping to get the second one of those up soon. I think that'll be enjoyable. And, if you could like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon, it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. I say it all the time, but really do appreciate guys checking out the show. It is thoroughly appreciated from my end. It's been an absolute pleasure. Have a great evening, and go Bucks.